Today on Israel Hayom Insider, days after Nashat Milhem, a 29-year-old Arab Israeli, opens fire on the streets of Tel Aviv, killing 2 and wounding 7, and is believed to have also killed an Arab Israeli taxi driver, the gunman remains at large, leaving Israelis wondering whether we've entered a new stage in the current wave of violence. With me in the studio to discuss this, contributor Ruthie Bloom.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Ruthie. I'm Steve Ganot. So, Ruthie, the atmosphere in Tel Aviv, it's different than it was before, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And I've lived in Tel Aviv now for 2 years after having lived decades in Jerusalem. And this is the first time that the atmosphere in Tel Aviv resembles that of Jerusalem in terms of the sense of terrorism or the foreboding. And that includes even during the war in Gaza in 2014. When Tel Aviv was constantly sent into bomb shelters, there were plenty of rockets fired in the direction of Tel Aviv. But even then, the atmosphere wasn't the way it is today.
Right, and I think also it's not like it is after a suicide bombing or something, an attack like that, where you know the attack is over, and or even a stabbing, because usually the stabbings end with the terrorist being killed, usually, or being caught. In this case, he's out there, he's at large, we don't know. People are wondering whether they should send their kids to school or not.
Exactly, and that is what resembles the atmosphere in Jerusalem when there's a surge in terrorism. Jerusalemites often say, well, should we send the kids to school? Or should they go to the mall? They shouldn't go to a birthday party. And now that's happening in Tel Aviv, which is very unusual.
Yeah. Do you think that this is a new phase? Like, you think it's first of all, the method, the shooting, is that new? Is that something we haven't seen before? And is it ISIS inspired? I've got to ask.
Yes, well, that's what I think. I think that that terrorism is the kind of thing that it kind of breeds itself. People are extremely influenced, just the way these young Palestinians have been influenced by Facebook, and they rile each other up. ISIS attacks, as we've seen in Paris, and the high alert in Europe in general, Belgium, for example, I think it definitely has an effect, whether or not somebody actually belongs to ISIS. He's influenced by that. They read each other's posts on Facebook and Twitter, and there's a whole community of terrorists out there, even when they're not joined, when they haven't joined the same group.
Yeah, I think we have to wait and find this terrorist, to question him and find out specifically if he identifies with ISIS, if this is
he might not. He might not identify with ISIS.
There's no lack of threats from Hamas, from Hezbollah, from other groups.
Absolutely, but the method of going to a crowded street on a Friday afternoon, at a pub where there's a birthday party going on, and to gun down people is kind of reminiscent of the Paris attacks. Why some people are saying it was inspired by ISIS, even though he may not be an ISIS supporter specifically.
Okay, another aspect of this attack, which if it's not unique, it's certainly unusual, is that the Prime Minister came to the site of the attack and gave a speech. Now, we saw that back in the 90s, I think, with the second, in the 90s in the Oslo period, and also in the second Intifada, the Prime Minister, whether it was Rabin or Peres or Sharon or Barak,
Olmert,
they would come to the scene often and give a speech and talk about the victims of peace or whatever it is they talked about. But Netanyahu hasn't been doing that usually, but here he did, and he got a little flack for that. Can you tell us about that speech, and what did you think about it?
He got flack because what he did not do was talk about the victims of peace. He said something very specific.
That's why he got flack?
No. He got flack for not saying this is the victims of peace. He got flack, yes. He got flack for saying, listen, you Arab Israelis, you better choose. Either you're loyal citizens of the State of Israel and with all the benefits that involves, or you're loyal to the Palestinians.
Right. What he said is you can't be Israeli in your rights and Palestinian, or Israeli in your obligations and Palestinian.
No, the other way around. Exactly. In your rights, you get all the rights, and then you follow the obligations of the Palestinians. For this, he got flack, and he was accused of taking an entire community of Arab Israelis and lumping them all in the same boat. And even more importantly, last week he announced, this was a Knesset decision, to allocate billions of shekels.
Right, 10 to 15 billion shekels
to
over
the
the
Arab,
next 4 to 5 years.
Exactly. To what they call minimize the gap between Jewish Israelis and Arab Israelis.
Things like education, social welfare, things like that.
Exactly. And because the idea has been that it's Israel's fault that Arab Israelis side with the Palestinians because Israel neglects to clear their garbage and blah, 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 which is, I think, complete nonsense. Israel neglects to clear the garbage of a lot of Jewish Israelis too, when there's inefficiency, and also Arab Israeli towns often don't pay their city taxes, and it's more complicated than that. But the idea that we've been neglecting them, there might be truth to it, but still, I don't think neglect leads to somebody to go and gun down a bunch of innocent people. And furthermore, the reason Netanyahu said it, what he said was, now this money is going to be conditional on behavior.
I think it was always conditional. It was always conditional on keeping the building code laws and on
this is different,
and on building high rises in the Arab
sector.
Yes,
this is different. Those are different kinds of conditions.
Yeah,
the money had conditions attached to it, but this was a different kind of threat. It was, you know what?
Well,
and Ayub Kara, a Druze Knesset member in Netanyahu's party, also said that. He said
he's the deputy defense minister. Isn't
exactly,
he?
but he's a Druze. He's not a Jew, and he said the same thing. He said, "Okay, you guys, you want this money? You got to stop."
He said something else interesting recently. He said that he has been involved in kind of secret negotiations with Arab Israelis who have gone to fight for ISIS. I don't know how many there are, a few hundred maybe, or 100 or so. He's tried to convince people to come back to Israel. You'll be prosecuted, but we're not going to throw the book at you. You're not going to, we'll go easy on you. You'll be interrogated. If you cooperate with the police, if you cooperate with the Israeli security forces, then you can come back and and you'll have a life here. And he convinced, I think, 5 or 6 to come back, but that's all. And he actually said recently, no more. He said, if you leave Israel to go fight for ISIS, it's a one-way ticket.
That's it. No coming back to Israel. And by the way, we've seen that in Europe. The trouble is that the fighters who go off, or the young people who go off to fight with ISIS, Europeans, the whole point is that they're getting trained to go back to their countries of origin and commit massive acts of terrorism.
I want to go back for a minute to the Netanyahu speech. He also said something else important. He said that we're going to invest a lot of resources now in law enforcement in the Arab sector. Now that, I think that was fine. I think that was, part of the neglect is neglect of law enforcement. And that means that there's a lot of illegal weapons in the Arab sector, and also, just crime, regular old crime, and regular law-abiding Arab Israeli citizens suffer from that. So if law enforcement is stepped up in the Arab sector, I think that can only help the Arabs, and it's part of the picture. It's part of what has to be done.
Absolutely. Look, those are like pockets of partial no-go zones, like in Europe.
Yeah.
Just like in Europe, where the police, where it's a little bit problematic, and they kind of leave it to the locals.
On the other hand, singling out the Arabs in this way, it definitely has it's problematic. It's problematic, and he should have maybe said that we're going to step up law enforcement everywhere. Because there are also in the Jewish sector, there are plenty of places that are neglected.
Absolutely.
And that also need more law enforcement.
But I think you're right. You're right. And it is true that it is a minority of Arab Israelis committing terrorism.
Certainly.
It's the Palestinians. I would have been happy if he had said, you see, the Palestinians are evil in every way, including by influencing Arab Israeli citizens who have everything to lose and nothing to gain by following the Palestinians.
One more question. The police have come under a lot of criticism because they haven't caught the terrorist yet, because they supposedly didn't respond quickly enough. They didn't come to the scene quickly enough. I don't know. What do you think about this criticism?
Okay, so first of all, let me say that by the time, as of this broadcast, they haven't caught the terrorist, and it's possible that by the time this airs, they will have caught him. But the fact is, yes, it's been days of manhunt for
This is the fifth day.
This is the fifth day, and so the public, of course, is blaming the police and the government. Those are the two bodies the public loves to hate and blame. That we know. That's not new. But in this case, I would say that it is very hard. First of all, the resources of the police going all over the place to be worrying about this terrorist and that terrorist and the knifing attacks. And now, what I'm talking about, they're going house to house. They're working very hard. It is very hard when a guy takes an automatic rifle and shoots up a whole place and runs away. We have another case this week of a sniper who shot in Hebron at the cave, near the Cave of the Patriarchs, wounding a female Israeli officer, and he also escaped. That's not being talked about so much. He escaped, and they haven't found him yet.
I think that's much more common because it's in Hebron. He, it's not exactly.
But also because he did not approach. He didn't approach the victims as the stabbers are doing. He didn't approach. He did it from afar. He was a sniper, and he had the chance to escape. Now, this guy, the terrorist we're talking about, the Tel Aviv pub killer, had a plan clearly. He ran. He got in a taxi. It isn't clear whether that taxi was waiting for him or he just hailed the taxi. They're looking into it because the fact is
he killed the
that he did. He got in the well, they're saying allegedly, but it seems that that's the case because what he did was get in that taxi and he hit a roadblock, a police roadblock, and he told the driver, drive off the road, and apparently the driver said no, and then he killed him and took over the wheel and continued driving. And when he got to a certain area near a certain hotel in Tel Aviv, he dumped the body, drove some more, and then realized that the car was a liability because it's recognizable, identifiable with its plates and all that.
Right.
So he abandoned the car and continued on foot. And that's where he was lost.
All of this happened in Tel Aviv.
All of this happened in Tel Aviv, and then a young girl found a cell phone in a building in Tel Aviv, and it turns out it was his. He dumped the cell phone, realizing that that's also something you can track.
Right.
The guy's no dummy, and nor is he insane, as some people were trying to. The family and the family's lawyer was saying he's mentally unstable.
Well, that still needs to be assessed.
Needs to be assessed, but now 2 of his brothers are in custody under
believe
suspicion.
his father also.
And now his father, though his father has been a loyal Israeli citizen. He was a volunteer in the police. He's condemned the attack. He said this is terrible. He asked his son to turn himself in publicly. Right. So we'll see.
Ruthie, thank you very much. It's a very upsetting topic, but
it is.
Hopefully by the time this airs, he will have been caught and we'll
know more
about this.
Until the next one.
Okay, until the next one. I want to thank our viewers for continuing to watch us and continuing to send us your feedback. We'd love to get it, and we'll see you next time.